This is Heart Rhythm TV. I'm Roderick Tung. With me today, we are going to be reviewing the 2023 International Expert Consensus Statement on Remote Device Clinic and Monitoring. And I have the co-chairs of this document, Aileen Ferrick from White Plains, New York, and Satish Raj from Alberta, Calgary. Welcome, Satish, and welcome, Aileen.
Thank you, Rod.
Thanks for having us.
Congratulations. Every document is someone's child, and this requires so much work, and none of us take this for granted, particularly with how hot of a topic remote monitoring is. Can you take us through a little bit of the behind the scenes? We love to go behind the scenes on Heart Rhythm TV of what it took to get this together and who the players are in this document.
Sure, I can begin, I think. So I will tell you that I joined the Scientific and Clinical Documents Committee back in 2019 before COVID, and said that I thought we should, redo the guidelines, and sort of got a little pushback. And then COVID happened, and people really realized the importance of remote monitoring. So that's sort of, it was 2020 when we started to organize our document. The first thing we did was a survey of mostly allied professionals, but a general survey of what people wanted to see as topics that were covered in the document. So that's sort of how we initiated the whole process. It is an international document, as you said. It includes, the other societies, Latin America and Asian Pacific. I also like to say, in addition to it being international, we also had an industry forum. So we wanted to get their take on how the future of remote monitoring, where they start going, as well as 3 patient partners to get a patient's perspective as well. So it was a very comprehensive group.
And I think that's important. One of the things I found very interesting is how varied the perspectives are, how varied the facts on the ground are in different parts of the world. In some places, remote monitoring really has taken hold, and in other places, uptake has been difficult due to the different issues with different stakeholders, funding issues in some cases, various geographic parameters. And so I think that perspective of having people from around the world made meetings very difficult, because there was never a meeting scheduled, or it wasn't the middle of the night for someone. But it did enrich our perspective that led to the document.
I think it also really reinforced the whole importance of the relationship we have with, our stakeholder partners, if you will, being the patients, as well as the manufacturers. I think the industry forum was really very bringing to light a lot of things, not just for us, but I think also for the manufacturer representatives to hear our version of it, including the patient perspective.
Well, it's so wonderful to bring together such a diverse group of stakeholders, right, in terms of crafting out this document. And again, for our viewers, this came out in May and will be coming out online in September. So maybe, Aileen, you can start with a couple take-home messages, because if this document could talk, or it should scream something, what should it be telling people that are watching and reading?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing we all have been saying is, just like the 2015 guidelines, we really feel this is standard of care, right? So everybody who has a device should be on remote monitoring. I think along with that is, if you're going to be on remote monitoring, the importance of connectivity. How do you keep patients engaged? How do you get them connected? I think that's very important.
And Satish, you're saying that's connectivity is a little different depending on what country you're in, as well, right? This is an international document, and we can't just focus on one specific region. There's a lot of diversity in terms of how that's practiced, right?
There's so many differences. Part of it is the infrastructure to set it up, but part of it is, and I think we're all living this, is that there are different technologies within the umbrella of what we call remote monitoring. There are some remote monitoring systems that were more a company's focus, where the remote monitoring visits were really like clinic visits, trying to emulate that. It was scheduled. It was not so much a day-to-day thing. And other companies have taken the approach of, we'll give you little bits of information every time so as not to information overload you, but you'll get something every day. And if there's a problem, you'll hear from us. And now within the company, there are some that are, more and more they're going to smartphone-based remote monitoring apps. And with that comes the ability across the board with that technology to really check in every day. Not that the clinic needs to check in with the patient, but the patient needs to check in with mothership, if you will. And so that we can better tell if there's a problem with that technology and have that feedback to the clinic. So the challenge for us right now is we're in an evolving time. And every clinic probably has multiple technologies they have to deal with. But I think where we're moving is to where it'll be more app-based and a lighter but more regular touch.
Well, not to mention, right, that every device is a little different. We still have micro or say leadless pacemakers and subcutaneous defibrillators that need to be inductively transmitted, right? You can't be connected continuously. Certainly the older technology, we all have many patients that have older pacemakers that they still have to make a transmission. It's not just going to be, so those are all of the different challenges that are faced with maintaining connectivity.
And in this document, we talk about the infrastructure that's needed, the training level, but then obviously the ratios, like how many people that you have in your clinic to make that argument for what's adequate staffing. Can you take us through with how that consensus came out?
Sure. So the first thing that we really feel is that in order to maintain remote monitoring is it's not just the clinical personnel's responsibility. It takes a village, if you will. So that also includes non-clinical personnel, such as medical assistants or even administrative people that are scheduling patients or calling them to find out why they're not connected, as well as the physician input. There is not a lot of direct evidence for us to know exactly what adequate staffing is, but we did take the evidence that was available and we were able to come up with a calculation. And it is in good gory detail in the document, but what we are recommending is that there be 3 full-time employees for every 1,000 patients that are followed in the device clinic.
You mentioned, Aileen mentioned in the beginning that, from the time she was on SCDC, that this was, the remote monitoring was of interest, but I think it's worth emphasizing, it wasn't just should everyone be on it and should we reiterate that? It was actually these practical issues. So, okay, so we're all supposed to have remote monitoring clinics, but how do we do that? It's, it really, when in medicine, when we add things on like this, it always seems to be sort of done at the end of your desk. It's okay, you have your regular job that we're paying you to do, and then do this also. And, one of the challenges is that, our clinic has certainly had staffing problems during and even since COVID. I think that's actually a fairly common and universal phenomenon. And when we've had shortages where people are out, our traditional model has been to pull the person that's assigned to remote monitoring to cover the in-clinic visits. And what this document is trying to get people to think about is maybe that's actually backwards. Maybe the more efficient way of delivering care is actually to shift these to remote monitoring and make sure we get that done. And if we need to, hopefully we don't need to cancel any visits. Hopefully we can staff better. But if we need to, we can, divert some of those inpatient visits to remote monitoring, which can be done more efficiently.
And that's really re-envisioning how care should be delivered in the future, right? And part of this as well that I think everyone appreciates is the continuous data deluge that is remote monitoring needs to be filtered and figured out what's actionable versus not actionable. And I think in this guideline, Aileen, you guys talk about alert programming, right? And the optimization of such.
Right. Right. So there are some, I do direct the audience to some very nice tables and figures that are available in the document. We looked at ILRs separately and said that they really need to be programmed according to the indication for the device. And then we looked at prioritization of programming of alerts. And we are making recommendations of what we would consider red or yellow or a higher or lower alert for all of the devices. We also sort of emphasize that once an actionable item is or event is addressed, that the devices be reprogrammed. So if someone has atrial fibrillation continuously, you're going to program that alert off, right? Or if a patient has complete heart block, you're not going to alert for ventricular pacing. Those sort of things are the recommendations that we've included in the document in order to help minimize the workload and, as you say, the deluge of alerts that have to be addressed.
Well, congratulations on this much needed document and these updates. This is important for the world as we are now peering into HRX that will be coming up, which is all about digital health and health tech. Remote monitoring is everything, and ensuring the quality and ensuring what we're monitoring and how many people are monitoring is so critical. And it's so great to see HRS and APHRS and LAHRS and EHRA come together for this really important document. So we appreciate you and how much effort it takes to co-chair a document like this. And thanks so much for being on Heart Rhythm TV.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rod, and thank you to the entire committee. It was a lot of work from a lot of people, and it wouldn't have happened if everyone didn't really roll up their sleeves and do the work quickly.
And I will have to say, there was not one person that didn't contribute. Everybody was so timely and effective. And I do, before we sign off, just want to emphasize that we do have the educational derivatives coming out. So the calculator for figuring out in your clinic what the 3 to 1,000 ratio may look like. And some of these other things that I'm saying, the diagrams and checklists and patient contracts, all should be available on our, the website for staff to be able to utilize more efficiently our document and our recommendations.
At the risk of going over a bit, can I just make one point about the calculator? Because I'm not sure if people understand what we're talking about. So the 3 in 1,000 was based on assumptions about the case mix. One of the things that's quite clear in the minimal literature that there is, and I suspect from our experience, is that ILRs are much more time consuming in terms of the efforts to sort out the remote transmissions than pacemakers. And ICDs are somewhere in the mix. And so what we've done, led by Janet Hahn, was to try and create a tool where individual clinics can add their case mix of volume of ILRs, of pacemakers, of ICDs, and based on the differential impacts on time, actually determine what the FTE equivalent is for their clinic. And we're in the process, we have a simple Excel tool, and we're in the process of trying to digitize it and put up a simpler tool where you don't have to see all the math in the background, but actually get the input in and the input out so that everyone can apply this where they live.
That's beautiful. So let me summarize. This living document has a voice, and the most important things that it's screaming is, number one, remote monitoring is the standard of care. Number two, connectivity is the priority, because if they're not connected, we're not impacting anything. Number three, there's an adequate staffing ratio that's recommended by this document of 3 for every 1,000. Number four, optimize the alerts and the programming, adapt it, right, based on what the physiologic needs are and what the conditions are of the patient. And then number five, we're reimagining how care will be delivered in the future and looking at truly actionable events versus just per protocol. This is when we interrogate you. This is when we should treat you. But it really should be truly on demand for the patient's physiology and the health needs. And I think this is really exciting, gives us so much momentum as we go into HRX as well. So thanks again. And thanks for being on Heart Rhythm TV, and we appreciate your efforts for Heart Rhythm Society.
Thanks so much, Rod.